This lesson is part 1 of section 2.6 on the distributive property. Today, we're going to be using the distributive property to be able to simplify an expression. So the distributive property is just a process of taking the term on the outside of the parentheses and multiplying it to each term on the inside. So for this example here, this 5 is on the outside of the parentheses. Now x plus 7 on the inside cannot be combined because those are not like terms. So normally in order of operations we would try to combine inside of the parentheses, but because we can't, we then do the next operation, which is to multiply. We call that to distribute. So we're going to distribute this 5 to both the x and to the 7. So I like to draw those little rainbows in there, or arrows, and that just helps me to remember what I'm supposed to distribute. So I'm going to take this 5 and I'm going to multiply it by the x first. So that's 5 times x, and then I'm adding to that 5 times 7. So then I simplify this and I rewrite this as 5x plus 35. So this would be my final answer here. Now notice I can't combine these. Some people will try to write this as like 40x or something. But remember, we can't combine this because this has an x and this does not have an x. So this would be incorrect. We leave it as 5x plus 35. Okay, now on our first example here, we've got a 3 on the outside of the parentheses. So we're going to make sure that we draw our little arrows in to remember that we're going to distribute to both the 3 and here to that 4. Now it's not just a normal 4, it's actually a negative 4. So let's be careful with how we write this. We're going to write this as 3 times m plus, this is a positive 3, so I'm going to write this as 3 and then times negative 4. I have to remember that I'm multiplying and not adding, and I also have to remember to keep that sign and attach it with that 4. So when I simplify this, 3 times m gives me 3m, and 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Now instead of writing plus negative 12, I can simplify that a little bit more and just write that as 3m minus 12. So we want you to get used to being able to go from this step right to this step without having to write plus and negative. Okay? Now eventually you won't even need to use this step at all. You'll be so good at this by the time we're finished with this that you can just go straight from here to here. But right now I want you to show this line of work here because it's really important that I know exactly what you're doing and that you know too what parts you're supposed to be multiplying. Okay, now let's try example number 2. Now in this problem we actually have a negative 2 out in front of the parentheses. So it's really important to make sure that we carry that negative 2 because we have to distribute a negative to both terms. So it's really important. Don't ignore the negative sign out in front of that number. So what we're going to do is take negative 2, multiply it by y, and then we're going to add to it another term. So the second term here is going to be negative 2 times negative 3. Okay? You don't have to use parentheses. I just like using parentheses, especially when there's negatives involved. But now we're going to go ahead and simplify. So negative 2y, that gives me negative 2y. Negative 2 times negative 3, well that's positive because of the double negative. So always, always, always when you're multiplying two negatives, make sure that becomes positive. So because we're adding positive 6, I'm just going to write plus 6. Okay? This would be my final answer. I cannot combine these any further because they're not like terms. Now in example 3, it's a little different because there's a number that comes after the parentheses that we need to distribute. And that's okay. Shouldn't trip us up because remember, 3 times 4 is the same as 4 times 3. In other words, in multiplication you can switch the order around. So I can actually go ahead and just rewrite this 4 out in front because I'm not really changing the problem, I'm just rewriting it so it looks familiar. So you guys can do that too. Anytime you see a number that comes after the parentheses, just rewrite it out in front. Again, we're going to go ahead and distribute the number out in front. It's a positive 4, so I don't have to worry about a negative. We're going to multiply 4 and the 2y, and 4 times negative 1. So if I rewrite that underneath, that's 4 times 2y, and then the second arrow, so let's add the term, the next term. The second arrow tells me to take 4 and multiply it by negative. Again, this is important. There's a negative out in front, so let's make sure we attach that negative to the 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and simplify. So 4 times 2y gives me 8y, and 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Remember, instead of writing plus negative 4, we can go ahead and just write minus 4. So adding a negative is the same as subtracting that number. So 8y minus 4 is my final answer. I cannot combine that any further because those are not like terms. Alright, that's the end of the lesson, guys. Good job. I'll see you guys tomorrow.